Hey, what's up everybody? This is 8-Bit Flashback. And today we're going to take a look at the 8BitDo retro receiver for the Super Nintendo and the Super Famicom. And what this is a Bluetooth adapter that plugs right into the controller port of your Super Nintendo or Super Famicom and allows you to pair up with 8BitDo Bluetooth controllers and a bunch of other controllers as well. On the back here it does show some of the controller compatibility with this adapter. It will work with the Xbox Bluetooth controller, the DualShock 3, DualShock 4, DualShock 4 Pro, Wiimote, Wii U Pro, Switch Joy-Cons, and Switch Pro. And this will also work with all the 8BitDo Bluetooth controllers such as the SF30 Pro, and this is one of my favorite retro controllers. And for this video I will be testing out a bunch of different Bluetooth controllers with this retro receiver such as the 8BitDo N30, and I will be testing this controller out with the Super Game Boy. And I'm also going to test out a Sega Saturn do-it-yourself 8BitDo Bluetooth controller. And I'll be testing this with the Retro Gen adapter for the Super Nintendo that allows you to play Sega Genesis games on your Super Nintendo. So I'll be playing a Sega Genesis game on a Super Nintendo with a Sega Saturn controller. As weird as that sounds. And I'm also going to test the Wii U Pro controller. Just look at what comes inside the box. Of course you get the 8BitDo retro receiver, and you also get a micro USB cable, and this can be used to plug into your receiver here, then plug the other end into your PC and update the software on this if needed. So this retro receiver is very simple to use. All we have to do is plug this into the controller port, and it is kind of a tight fit. Then push the pairing button, which is going to make a blue LED light blink really fast. Now push the pairing button on the controller you're trying to use. So I'm going to wake it up here, then push the pairing button. And within a few seconds it should link right up. So right now this is in pairing mode, and once you get a solid light, that means it's paired with the receiver. So I have a solid light here and here, so now this controller is ready to go. So now that I've paired this controller with this receiver, it will remain paired with this receiver until I pair a different controller. So even if I turn the Super Nintendo off and back on, all I have to do is push the start button with this plugged in, and this should pair up no problem. Okay, let's test out all the buttons. We'll try back, forward, up, down. Let's try B, A, X, Y. Let's try the shoulder buttons. So it looks like all the buttons are working fine. And I'm curious if the analog sticks do anything here. That one doesn't do nothing. Oh, that's cool. So if you want to, you could play with the analog stick. Now that might be cool for some of the racing games and maybe some of the fighting games as well, but personally I prefer the D-pad, so that's what I'm going to stick with here. So everything seems pretty responsive with this controller. I'm not noticing any lag issues. When I push the button, it reacts just like it should. And let's go ahead and slow it down here so we can see at the same time I push the button how it reacts. So right here, what I'm looking for is to see if there's any delay between the time I press the button and the time the character on the screen responds. And from what I can see, there doesn't seem to be an issue. Now let's go ahead and play the game here for just a few. Now let's do a test with the original wired Super Nintendo controller versus the 8BitDo Bluetooth controller and the retro receiver. And what I'm looking for here is to see if I can see any difference in the response time when I push a button on the controller. So we're going to push the X button on both controllers at the same time on the count of 3. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to start counting quietly here. And there might be some micro differences here, but I can't tell. When I look at the screen, everything looks the same to me. So everything seems to be working good with this controller. Let's go and test out another controller now, and I'm going to try the Sega Saturn controller out here. with some Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in my Retro Gen adapter, so let's see how this works. And once again, it seems pretty responsive. I don't see any noticeable issues with lag. When I push that button, it reacts just like it should. And for those of you curious about the button mapping when using this Sega Saturn controller with your Super Nintendo, this would be the B button, this would be the A button, this would be the Y button, and this would be the X button. And then these two buttons here would be the left and right, and then your left and right on top of the controller would also be left and right as well. So you have two different ways to hit the left and right buttons. Now it's time to test out the 8BitDo N30 Bluetooth controller with this receiver and the Super Game Boy. And we'll try some DuckTales. So the controls for the original Game Boy only had a directional pad and two action buttons. So this controller actually works great for the Game Boy games because it has a directional pad, two action buttons, and then two turbo buttons for those action buttons. And let's go ahead and test this out now. So here's the A button. Here is the B button. Here is Turbo A and Turbo B. And again, with this controller, I'm not noticing any issues. It seems very responsive. Okay, it's time to try out some Super Street Fighter 2 using a Wii U Pro controller. So I'm going to push the pairing button on my receiver here, and then the sync button on the controller. And it paired really fast, actually. It's already up and going. Alright, let's test out the buttons here. Here's the directional pad. There's back, forward, up, down, A button, B button, Y button, X button. Let's see, there's the right button, the left button, here is ZL and ZR. So it's really easy to pull off some of the combos with a directional pad. But I'm going to try with the analog stick and see how easy that is here. Actually, that worked really easy. And the same thing goes for this controller when paired with this retro receiver. I'm not noticing any lag, so we'll go ahead and push a button here so you can see the response. So it seems to be responding immediately. And if there is any lag, I can't see it. So this 8BitDo retro receiver for the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom seems to be working as advertised. As you can see in the video, I've tested this with a bunch of different controllers, and they all seem to work fine. So if you're looking for a wireless controller option for your Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, this might be right for you. Well, it's time for me to go now. If you like this video, if you could, hit that like button, and have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.